Hi and welcome back to my channel, Rita Stories. So today I wanted to do a review on the MAM 2in1 double breast pump. Now I bought this probably in the second trimester of my pregnancy because in my mind I really wanted to breastfeed, but at the same time I wanted my partner, her dad, to kind of have that bonding experience of bottle feeding, especially late at night when I might want some extra moments in bed. Then he could quite easily pick up a bottle that I had pre-prepared in the fridge, what have you, and give her that. But actually what happened in the end was Avery really struggled to latch onto me in the initial stages after her being born, and it turned out that if I wanted to breastfeed her at all, I needed to express my milk and feed it to her via bottles. So that's what I did. That was our kind of feeding or breastfeeding journey in the initial days for sure. And what I ended up doing, which I never really thought would happen to me, was I exclusively pumped and fed breast milk via bottle to Avery, probably for the first 3 to 4 months. And I was still quite adamant at this stage to kind of try nursing her. And eventually she ended up doing both. She swapped between bottle and breastfeeding or nursing on me very, very easily. And I was so relieved because there is a lot that goes on with expressing, which I never really thought about when I started my journey on this, in terms of the sterilising and the washing, all the parts. As you can see, I've got some of the parts on the table here. Some of them I didn't get out from the box, but there are lots of pieces to it. But for the purpose of today's video, I just wanted to kind of go through with you my thoughts, my pros and cons of this breast pump, double breast pump, and whether I would use this in future pregnancies, and basically my thoughts and whether I would recommend it. So let's just jump right in. I have made in my notebook here a list of pros and cons, and actually as I was writing them down there are quite a few things to discuss. So as mentioned, I purchased this in my second trimester. I found it on Amazon. It was reduced down, brand new, reduced down, and so that is why I ended up purchasing it so early on. She wasn't even here yet. I had no idea that I was going to have issues with latching or anything like that, but I wanted to have it, and I thought at some point this would play a part in our feeding journey. So if I start off with the pros. So this is the unit that does everything. So as you can see, one of the pros I really liked about this is that it's very sleek design. It looks good. It's quite ergonomic in your hand. So in terms of the design, I was really drawn to that. So that was definitely one of the pros. Another pro, which I later found out that not all breast pumps have, is it actually has a master switch on the back where you can switch it off, which means that you can press all the buttons on the front and it won't activate the motor inside. It doesn't switch on because of the master switch. And I found this really handy for if you're going on holiday, which we did. She was probably about 6 months old and I was still expressing and nursing her at this point. And we took this on holiday, and to have a master switch at the back made it easier for transportation, and if it's in your checked in luggage, you don't have to worry about things hitting it in the luggage and it being switched on and it vibrating and move, like the motor being on. So that's a really good pro. Also on the machine, when you activate it and switch it on, if I do this, and it's running, you can actually put a hold on it and it locks the display basically. So you can touch all the buttons and it doesn't change the settings that it's currently on. And so for you to unlock it, you press the pause and the clock button, the alarm button, at the same time, and then you can change the settings and everything like that. So that was kind of handy to have, but definitely the master switch at the back was a massive good thing. The other thing I really liked about this, and again, not many of the other machines or other brands offer this, is that it has a left and right individual settings. So for me, I found that my right side had very good supply, whereas my left side was mediocre. And so what I tried to do was, when I was pumping, I would pump my right side on, say for example, a setting of 3, but to increase my left supply, so it would hopefully in the end match up to my right supply, I would increase the settings and have it on a higher level, not a huge amount, maybe just 1 level more. And so when I was pumping, the pump would basically be working harder for my left side as it was on a higher level. Whereas I think a lot of the other breast pumps, they have just 1 setting and it will be the same left and right. So I really like that. Also, there's quite a lot of different combinations you can have. If you go through the modes, you could have left side only, right side only, left and right alternating, and then left and right dual functionality, like working together at the same time. So I really like that, how there's loads of different combinations and there are just lots of different settings. Also, in terms of settings and levels, I should say, there are 2 modes, as most breast pumps would have, and that is the stimulation or the letdown stage, and then the expression phase. So the initial one, you'll normally set this onto a letdown or stimulation mode, and it has levels 1 through to 9, which is quite a lot. But also the expression mode, once your milk has come in, you have to change it from the letdown mode to the expression mode. It also goes from level 1 through to 9. And again, I think there is a lot of variation between the 1 to 9, and so most people are definitely going to find a level of sorts that would be right for them. So that was definitely a pro in terms of the different combinations of modes, but also the number different of levels and suitability. The other thing I really liked about it was the battery life. So this has a runtime when fully charged of about 3 hours. And I say about because it depends on what settings you have. If you have it on the highest setting, it might not last the full 3 hours. But I really like this because if it meant that you were out for the day, especially in those early days, if you are exclusively pumping, you need to be pumping every 3 hours to kind of get your supply up and going, but also you need to be feeding your baby every 2 to 3 hours, especially as mentioned in those early days and weeks. So for me, that came in really handy because knowing that it would last 3 hours meant that I can just take it out fully charged and not worry too much about the battery life. I would normally pump for about 30 minutes in each session. So if you think about, if you're pumping every 2 to 3 hours and you're away for a number of hours in the day and each session is a 30-minute pumping session, then you're going to need a good number, at least probably 2 hours, maybe 3 hours if you're gone for the whole day, of pumping time of battery life in this. Otherwise you do need to take your charger out with you. So I really like that it does actually have quite a long battery life. And then also what I found, and I'll go into this a little bit more detail a bit later, but I found that the whole unit and the pump itself really comfortable, and I really liked the silicone cushion to the funnel or the flange. It just was really comfortable. It didn't pinch in any way. It feels really soft, and I just really enjoyed it. In terms of, I have tried other breast pumps where it didn't have this at all, and you would pump directly into a hard plastic funnel, and the other ones that I've tried, it actually pinched me and it hurt. So having this extra insert, this extra layer of cushioning, was really handy and just made the experience quite more enjoyable, really. Then the last couple of things to mention is that I really like the bottles. So for me, I kind of knew that I wanted to use the MAM bottles for feeding, irrespectively of the pump. I liked the idea of the MAM bottles because they're anti-colic. Quite a number of bottles on the market are anyway, but I really like the fact that you could wash it from the top down, as all bottles are, and bottom up, which not many are. And what I liked about it meant that I could get into all the nooks and crannies, all the crevices of the bottle, and know that I'm thoroughly cleaning it. Whereas some bottles, especially when you get to the larger, like the taller sizes, it gets quite hard to kind of clean around the bottom, and like you can't get your sponge down there or a bottle brush and like get right into those corners. So I really like the fact that you can kind of take this apart from the top and from the bottom. The other thing I really like about it is that they advertise that you can sterilize the bottle in a microwave. And what you do is you kind of need to assemble it in a certain way and just fill up the lid half full of water, pour it in and stack it in a certain way, not like this, but in a different kind of format. And then you just microwave it. And I thought that was really handy for if we were out at grandparents or at friends' houses, what have you, then I could sterilize this quite easily. Most households or most places have a microwave, so that was definitely a plus for me, that I didn't need necessarily to boil it, or I didn't need to put it in like a UV sterilizer, for example. So I really thought that was a pro. And then the other thing to mention is I had a problem, and this is part of a con as well, but the customer services were really, really helpful, and I actually lost one of these. I think they call it a valve membrane, and without this, your entire breast pump doesn't actually suck milk out. It doesn't draw the milk out from your breast. So this kind of really is the key to the whole unit almost. And without this, as mentioned, it doesn't work. But I didn't realize when I purchased this, and for the first probably month or so, I didn't realize that this comes off this. And I must have been washing it really heavy-handedly, and this popped off when washing it, and it actually went down the plug hole. And I didn't realize at all, even when I was assembling everything back together after cleaning it all, until my next pump session, and I placed the pump on me and realized that it wasn't working. Air was just being passed through the unit. And so what happened was that I called up MAM customer services, and I didn't even know how to describe it. I didn't know what they were. I just said this, like, I think I called it a contact lens type thing. And the lady knew immediately what I was talking about. And she goes, "That's no problem. I'll send some through to you in the post." And sure enough, she did. I think it came like a day, maybe 2 days later. And they do just send you these if you lose them, free of charge in the post, which was really, really handy. And had I not been in such a flap when I realised that my breast pump wasn't working, I probably should have checked the box, because inside the box, when you purchase it in here, they give you a number, probably about 4 to 6 spare membranes, valve membranes. And so I could have actually just picked one out of the box, and used it and I would have been absolutely fine. But because I was in such a panic, didn't know what I was doing, didn't know what it was that I had lost, I thought I had actually broken the pump completely. I could have just taken one out of the box. But yes, customer services have been really, really good every time I've called up. And yeah, they've been really helpful and assisted me and really understood my need for needing something quite urgently. But whilst I didn't have this, I ended up using the hand pump. And this is, again, another pro of this whole bundle. It is a 2-in-1 double breast pump. So it has the electric pump, but also in the pack has a manual pump as well. And if I take one of these off, so you need to take off the lid and the diaphragm, and then you pop this in, turn it to get a tight suction. And then you also need to put this in so that it draws the milk through. And there you go. So whilst I was waiting, as mentioned, for those contact lens type things, the membranes come through, what I had to end up doing was actually hand pumping whilst waiting for it. And so I was really, really grateful for using this, because had I not had this, and Avery at this moment in time wasn't latching and so wasn't nursing on me directly, I would have really struggled to have fed her. I didn't want to end up with mastitis or clogged milk ducts. So actually, I was really, really thankful for having this. The other thing to say is that when I ended up opening up this box for the very first time, using this was a bit daunting, the electric breast pump. And so for me, a good way into easing into the expressing or pumping journey of breastfeeding, I actually started off using the handheld manual pump. And for me, that was just a bit more comforting to know that I didn't need to have two machines on me pumping away, because that is quite scary. And it was early hours of the morning when I just realised that Avery wasn't latching on me and I just needed another alternative to kind of get the milk out from me and into her. Also, it's really good to have on the go. So if you are out and about and you don't want, or you don't have any battery life on this left, or you've left this at home, or you don't want to carry something like this in your handbag, it's just quite handy just to have this, have the lid on it, and then, you know, you can take it out and use it as and when. So definitely another pro that this whole pack comes with the handheld manual pump too. So I think those are all my pros of this breast pump. I do have a couple of cons to mention too. So for me, I would say the biggest con would be the weight. So I do appreciate that it's probably got two motors in here, which is why it can have separate left and right functionality. But because of that, it is a really, really weighty piece of kit. And I wouldn't necessarily put this in my changing bag when I'm out and about for the day. Instead, I actually put this in a separate tote, shoulder like tote, and all these pieces, so that I didn't want to have all my breast pump parts just loose in my changing bag. And because it's quite heavy, I wanted it separate from everything else. So I would definitely say a con is the weight. And it is quite a bulky item. Again, it does have probably 2 units inside it, which is why it is so bulky, because it can do the left and right functionalities separate and irrespective of each other. Previously in my pros, I did say I really like the sleek design. And whilst it is sleek and I like the look of it, it is aesthetically pleasing, I would say it being cylindrical shaped is a con, because what I found on a number of times, I put it on my table like here, and I would sit in this chair here and pump, and everything would be kind of plugged in, all your tubes are in and everything else like that, and I'm pumping away, and I lean down to grab my bottle of water from the floor where I've kept it, or a cup of tea, what have you. And what I've noticed is that quite easily it loses its balance, and because it's cylindrical, it kind of rolls off the table. And I have actually dropped this probably 2 to 3 times from a decent height onto the floor. And thankfully, every time I have dropped it, it has been on carpet and it didn't do too much damage, and it still works. But I can just imagine if I had dropped this in the kitchen or where I have hard floors, this definitely wouldn't have survived because of the weight. But I think had it been not cylindrical, it would have been much better. It would have been a bit more grippy to the table. And whilst this light green area is a bit grippy, a bit rubbery, I think for the weight of the product, the weight of this unit, it needs more grip on the bottom so that it doesn't like move as easily off the table. So that is definitely a con for me. As mentioned, I have dropped it 2, maybe 3 times, and the fact that it's still intact, I'm quite shocked because it is a heavy item to fall onto the ground. Some other things to mention is, and I mentioned this before as part of the customer services, but this membrane, it is so flimsy, and I didn't even realise it comes off this, I don't even know what this is called. It comes off this valve, but the membrane is so small and held on by not that much. As you can see, it's held on by 1 notch of the silicone membrane. And I would say that considering this is a very important piece of kit that you're quite reliant on, especially if your baby isn't latching and nursing on you, breastfeeding directly on you, you need this. And I think that especially when washing it, you don't see it in the water because it kind of floats around like a contact lens. It becomes see-through. I think if they had made this a different colour, I mean, going with this colour scheme, if they'd made it green, then you would have been more aware that this thing even exists in your piece of kit. But also, if it's floating around a bucket of water in your sink, that you know to reassemble it back. So I would say that's a con for me. I have used other breast pumps whereby their version of this, the valve, is a bit more robust and it is actually coloured and you can see it a lot better. So you're just aware of it. So that is a con. The other thing to say is that these collection cups, so the pack comes with this milk storage cups, or collection cups as it's known as. And if you want to collect from pumping directly into these collection cups, you need to actually attach it to this, then onto this, then have your pump onto this, and then immediately you can see it's quite bulky to then have on you. And then you're attached onto these wires like this, and it's all going, right? I think it would have been a better design if the collection cups could attach directly on to the pump itself. But unfortunately, the way that the mouth of this cup is, it doesn't actually fit into this at all. And so, yeah, it means that it has to bypass your bottle in order to collect it, which is a bit annoying, because if you want to just pump purely for collection and not feeding the baby straight away, it just means that you end up having to clean this, which I think is a bit unnecessary. So I would have definitely thought that collecting straight into the storage pots would have been easier. So that is, I would say, a con. However, something I didn't realise, I met up with a friend most recently and she uses these storage pots for weaning. So she would cut up grapes or cut up bread, fruit. She would fill it up with yogurt and then take it out with her to feed her baby or toddler at this age. And actually using these as weaning cups for food is a really, really good idea, and it doesn't really leak, so because it's not designed to leak, and so that's pretty good for that purpose. So I really like that for sure. Then another con, unfortunately, is that when you're cleaning and taking this apart, and bearing in mind, when you talk to the midwives, they tend to say that you should be cleaning your pump and all the parts after every single pumping session. So again, in those early days when you're pumping every 2 to 3 hours, if you're exclusively pumping like I was, then there is a lot of pieces to, let me move this out of the way. There are a lot of pieces to clean. So you have got your cap for the funnel, one piece, your cushion insert, silicone cushion insert for the funnel, 2 pieces, this piece, 3 pieces, your diaphragm, 4 pieces, your valve, 5 pieces. Let's count this as in one because it's the silicone membrane. Then you've got your bottle, 6, 7, 8. I think 9, but you have a lot of pieces that you need to clean. In those early days, you're spending a lot of time pumping and then cleaning and then sterilizing, just to kind of get away with maybe 2 or 3 less pieces. It would have been much, much better. For someone who is just starting to pump and are at the beginning of their pumping journey, it is quite daunting to have all these pieces and think, oh my goodness, I don't know how everything connects together. But sure enough, like once you've done it a number of times, you can probably do it with your eyes closed. But it's for the initial stages, it is, the first couple of times, it is quite scary looking at everything and thinking, oh my goodness, have I got all the bits? The other thing I would say in terms of cleaning is there are lots and lots of nooks and crannies in this specifically. And initially I was just rinsing everything out with soapy water using a traditional sponge. But I noticed that a lot of gunk was getting stuck in these areas and wasn't getting cleaned properly. And so what I had to do was I had to go out and buy a pack of these brushes, which I got off Amazon, and they're all different sizes, which is great. You don't have to get something like this, but my point is that there's so many nooks and crannies, and as you can see here, hopefully you can see on the camera, that a traditional sponge wouldn't be able to get into this space. There's a hole at the top, and like this, a traditional sponge wouldn't be able to get through this little hole or through, it's a wired brush, wouldn't be able to get through this area here, or all of these areas and things like that. And so actually it would have been really helpful if MAM had flagged that you need a separate cleaning brush, or provided one in the box, so that you have all the gear that you need to use this, but also wash it and maintain all the pieces and keep everything clean. So I would say that again is another con. And then the last thing I would probably mention is the price. This box of equipment isn't super cheap. It is a double breast pump. You can get a version of this which is single, which then is cheaper, but then if you're pumping both sides, both breasts, you need to double your time that you spend expressing. So yeah, this is quite an expensive piece of kit. When I researched it today, at the time of filming, it was roughly about £260 off Boots. So, I mean, definitely not a cheap piece of kit, but also quite important one to have. There are other brands out there on the market that do a similar like double electric breast pump, which is more cost effective or cheaper. So yeah, that was a lot to go through, wasn't it? There was a lot of pros and a lot of cons, for sure. I really wanted to love it and enjoy it when I did all my research, and I read lots of reviews before buying it. And when I bought it, I thought I'd made, you know, a really solid, good decision. But actually there were lots of things that people didn't talk about, which hopefully I've at least covered in this video, which I think, had I known about it, made me think more thoroughly about my purchase choice. Would I recommend this product? I would say, actually, having been using this for a good number of months, I would actually say there has been so many more wearable breast pumps that have entered now onto the market at a lot more affordable prices. I think I would say, if I was to relive through my journey again, knowing what I know now, I probably actually would have done more research on wearable pumps, because the fact that I was exclusively expressing for those first 3 to 4 months, it is a lot of time to spend in one area, sitting alone in your house, in your room, trying to pump. And it meant that I couldn't do anything else. It meant that I couldn't prepare food, I couldn't walk my dog, I couldn't see to my baby, I couldn't do anything, because you are literally sat, for me, in that chair, putting this on a table, hoping it doesn't roll over and fall on the ground, and then you're holding your pump onto you. And whilst they say, you know, you can buy these bras where you insert the pump, the flange into the bra and it will support, it doesn't really, because as mentioned when I was showing you, once you've added on all the bottles and everything else like that, it's quite a bulky item. And so once you've got all of these bits on, it's quite big and heavy, and once you've started filling up with milk, it becomes heavier, and so you do require 2 hands, so you are completely stuck, really. And I think just having a wearable pump, if it is as good as something like this, with suction power and everything else, having the flexibility and being able to be mobile, I think that for me would be a game changer. I will leave you on that note. There's lots to consider when making such a big purchase, and it's such an important purchase as well if you do decide to go down the pumping route in your early days or breastfeeding journey. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you give me a thumbs up if you liked it, or if you got something out of it. And make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and turn on that notification bell if you want to see what videos I'm posting up next. But for now, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye.